Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation. So today we're going to talk a little bit about machine perfusion. I know it's not particularly common in this part of the world, but I'm going to show you what we can do. So when we talk about machine perfusion, what are the considerations? I think first of all is when do you apply it? Do you apply it when the organ arrives to your center? Do you apply it continuous? Do you do it with hypothermic, normothermic, and so on? So why do we do it? I think it's important to know that certainly in the context of India, long travel distances, this may be one of the key factors, extending the preservation time, allowing you for logistics, complex logistics of also patient. But more importantly is in the context of our practice in the West, is about assessing viability, because our donors are older with more comorbidity, and therefore we want to improve utilization, particularly in the context of DCD. And as a result, we want to improve outcomes and therefore improve the long-term function and the viability of the organ, particularly, for example, bile duct in the liver. But one of the key points which machine perfusion can open is actually that of repairing and rejuvenating the organ. And I'm going to show you some examples on that today. Now, I'm not going to go through individual studies, but what I want to present to you is this, which I really encourage you to read if you're interested in machine perfusion, is a Cochrane review undertaken by one of my friends in Newcastle, Professor Colin Wilson and his team. So first of all, let's look at the kidney. What is the evidence for kidney machine perfusion? So there have been about 22 randomized control trials. Kidney machine perfusion started quite early, but most of them use static cold storage as control. As you can see, 19 studies are cold without oxygen, 2 with oxygen, and there's 1 study with normothermia. And there's no studies to date on normothermic regional perfusion in kidney. And this review showed a number of things. First of all, that continuous machine perfusion, so from when the donor organ comes out of the donor until implant, without oxygen, that improves graft survival. And the benefit, although in the initial studies it was up to 1 year, now extend up to 10 years post-transplant. So the evidence is very strong, suggesting the use of hypothermic machine perfusion. In contrast, if you apply it only when the organ arrives to your center, there is really no benefit. What about delayed graft function that incurs costs? I think, again, continuous machine perfusion is better in terms of reducing delayed graft function, and again, no benefit if you apply it when it arrives to you, and it's the same for DBD and DCD. But more recently, the concept was said, well, what about adding oxygen to this? And I think those 2 studies that came from the COPE consortium in Europe showed that adding oxygen further improves graft survival, particularly in the older DCD, but no benefit if you do it end-ischemic. So clearly the message is that we have to start at the donor, and perhaps we should add oxygen. So what about normothermia? And this is one single randomized controlled trial that was done in the UK in 4 centers, published 2 years ago in Nature Med, which really showed no reduction in DGF and basically comparable graft survival. So the message from this study was very simple. We cannot, 2 hours of normothermia is not enough to improve the quality of the kidney. So what can we understand? Can we make some inferences from this Cochrane analysis? And this is a very elegant way of doing it. It's basically a comparative analysis. So what does it do? Everything has been compared to static cold storage. NMP with static cold storage, HOPE with static cold storage. And by inference through this network meta-analysis, we actually allow us to compare indirectly the 2 methods. And you can see here on this complex paper that was published recently in AJT, that again, the benefit appears to be in the hypothermic machine, but not necessarily much benefit in terms of NMP to date. So you can ask, okay, plenty of evidence, what do we do with it? I think on the kidney side at least, the benefit is very clear. We have to initiate hypothermic machine perfusion and should be considered the norm, current gold standard for preservation for all deceased donor kidneys. The evidence supports that perhaps we should add oxygen, certainly in the context of DCDs, but I think we need more trials to understand the entire benefit of oxygenated HMP. Whilst for NMP, I think we do not have yet enough evidence to put a clear statement for that. So what about the liver? And I think the liver has now taken over from kidney in terms of utilization of machine perfusion. And here are what we can do in terms of NRP in the donor, hypothermic oxygenated control rewarming, where we bring the organ from cold to warm, or NMP. But here's a challenge we face, because really we have a number of combinations that we can use in clinic. So how do we make sense of this? How do we demonstrate which organ should benefit from which combination or individual machine perfusion strategy? And I think that's our challenge for the future. In terms of the same Cochrane analysis, there have only been 7 studies so far, 4 in hypothermia, 3 in normothermia, and again, no randomized control on NRP. So what do we now know? That hypothermic oxygenated perfusion for the liver, be it HOPE or dual, reduces biliary complications. And I think that's a benefit, and also early allograft dysfunction, and some indication that may reduce acute rejection. And as a result, it improves 1-year graft survival. In contrast, for NMP, there is a significant heterogeneity in the studies, and therefore we do not quite make a clear statement here. We know we use more organs, perhaps better a reduction in early allograft dysfunction, but not much else. So I think we need to rethink where the place of NMP is. And perhaps the place is here, combining the two together. And this is an elegant study from the Dutch group, has now put into clinical practice. I mean, this is looking at DCD, but essentially you take an organ, put it on hypothermic machine perfusion for a couple of hours, slowly rewarm it, and then evaluate it as NMP. One thing we haven't talked about is actually NRP, which is normothermic regional perfusion initiated at the donor in DCD. And now we know that NRP versus NMP is much better, and this is a study from the Cambridge group, which showed that in terms of biliary complications, there are much fewer if you use NRP versus NMP. And of course, NRP was driven by the liver, and the question was, what about the other organs? And I think I'm going to show you just one study here, and this is most recently published from the US, which mirrors very much our European experience, where they showed that if you use NRP, you increase utilization, you decrease organ discard rate, and you decrease delayed graft function. So altogether, good news, and it's not just liver and kidney, it's the same we've seen for the pancreas in the UK. So the bottom line is that NRP has been a game changer for the DCD retrieval and should be considered the initial approach because it benefits all organs. But where do we go next with machine perfusion? This is yesterday's approach, what I've shown you so far. For me, the future is in this, is how about using machine perfusion as a platform to deliver some of the therapies. And you heard Professor Lindstedt earlier on, if you were at the talk talking about centralization of services, because these are expensive technologies, not every center. In Europe, for example, there are 696 transplant centers. Not everyone should have this, because it's not about the toys in the cupboard, it's about experience, personnel, and so on, and how do you able to assess the organs. So we think that the future, certainly in my view, is that we have to have a centralized facility, and this is what we've got established in Karolinska. At the moment, it's a cross-disciplinary hub where we bring a lot of specialties together to try not just to do the clinical part where you assess the organs, you improve the organs, but also you create an environment for research and rapid expansion of the technologies and testing new therapies. We work in a combined hub together with Lund, with Professor Lindstedt's group, and these are our research experimental capacities. So all of a sudden we offer a cross-organ platform for anyone to come and test their particular therapies and expedite the implementation of a new discovery from bench to human. Having this facility allows you a number of things. First of all, you say, okay, what about the strategies we can do to improve the organs? And there are a number of those. Reduce ischemia perfusion injury, pharmacological interventions, and so on, including stem cells. And this is a way, it's a starting point, because the next generation, it's actually a way to bioengineering where you use different cells. This is, again, focused on liver, where you can look at a number of cells that you can use to try and modulate the quality of the organ or repair that organ. So what is used at the moment? What has been tried? Most of them are in experimental stage. Some of them are making it to the clinic very shortly in terms of trials. But these are some of the examples that have been used. And including hepatitis C elimination during machine perfusion and so on. So let me show you some examples of what can be done and what we've achieved so far. We know that mitochondria is key to the ischemia perfusion injury, and this is one that if you test and you repair, we think is going to improve the organ. And this is a collaborative effort from our joint labs, where essentially we've done a pig model of cross-circulation for 6 hours. So the livers were taken, put on the machine for 4 hours with or without treatment, and that liver on the machine then was connected to another body to support the function and so on. So what we've shown is that both in the perfusate and bile, if you treat with mitochondria, there's a much more rapid repair of the organ with reduction in the lactate, a drop in the AST, and a much better glucose metabolism. And of course, we've seen that better tissue preservation, fewer signs of cell death, preserving Kupffer cells, and better cholangiocyte preservation, which is very important. And this is with an ischemic time of 2 hours. So worm ischemic time of 2 hours, which is impossible currently in clinical practice. But an alternative is actually to go straight to the stem cells and progenitor cells, and this is what the Cambridge group has done, where they've taken cells from different parts of the bile ducts in the liver, dissected, isolated, and then created sort of organoids, which were then implanted or injected in the liver during machine perfusion. And they showed that they are functional and they begin to produce bile. The only challenge with this is that to make it work, you have to block the bile ducts, otherwise the production of the bile will wash the cells away. So this is not technically applicable clinically, but there's ways around it. Our group has looked at human biliary epithelial cells as a treatment. We've isolated cells from the biliary tree, which is not quite an easy feat to do, and then we were injecting them in a mouse, and we've shown that they repair the bile duct and they can regenerate and improve their function. But the mechanism is quite complex, and one of the options here is that there is a phenomenon of senescence, and certainly looking at the liver, senescence affects liver in two ways. In the hepatocytes, it goes apoptosis. In the cholangiocyte, it goes senescence. But there are anti-senolytics drugs on the market, so why not block that senescence episode with drugs to try and repair the cholangiocytes? And this is exactly what we've done here. But the beauty is that you can administer the drugs on the machine perfusion or at the time of retrieval, and this is what we've done here. So the combination of commercially available drugs, dasatinib and quercetin, they were delivered at procurement. So all of a sudden, you can imagine that you can give that to the donor and you potentially improve, you have effects on all organs, but certainly our focus was liver here, and we've shown that essentially we reduce senescence and increase proliferation of the biliary cells to undertake repair. An alternative strategy, certainly for liver, is to remove the fat. And I think this is an important point, particularly in the Western population, where the liver, the donors are a little bit more heavy. And this paper led to a randomized controlled trial in the UK, which showed that if you add a cocktail of defattening drugs to the machine perfusion, you actually get better function than machine perfusion alone. So if you put the liver, a fatty liver on machine perfusion, they will lose fat in 48 hours. But you can speed the process up by doing that. An alternative is to actually start delivering things with adenoviral vectors, and this is an elegant paper from the group in Sydney, where they've done exactly that. They've demonstrated that if you have the liver on machine perfusion for quite an extended time, nearly 21 hours, you can then deliver the drugs through the adenoviral vector. So all of a sudden, we find a vehicle to administer anything we want. What else can we do? Well, one of the things we can try on machine perfusion is actually change the blood group. And this is has been done in lungs, has been done now in kidneys, where the Cambridge group have demonstrated that you can convert an A group with enzymatic enzyme administration to a universal blood group 0. This is the pilot work. Essentially, they've shown that you can keep the function of the liver, of the kidney perfectly. I think we need to see it in translation in clinical work. One of our interests in my group is really looking at delivery of mRNA IL-10. So this is the same technology that was used for generation of the anti-COVID vaccines. Now we can use that as a lipid nanoparticles to deliver to the kidney. And this product, the idea is to to deliver it to reduce the telegraph function. And for that, we're using an innovative machine that is yet not on the market that allows us to preserve the kidney for up to 7 days, normothermically. So during that period, we can assess the therapies. This is all great. These are some examples, but there are some challenges in here, and I think certainly we need to address that, because preserving an organ for a long time comes up with issues. And one way of doing that, in particular for liver, you split the liver and you have a perfect clinical and research environment, because you can treat one side and the other one side acts as a control. So far, the liver had been perfused up to 3 weeks, various strategy with dialysis, without dialysis, and so on. But I think that is where one of the challenges we need to address: how to perfuse, what with, and for how long. And the other issue, which is very important if you give something to an organ, is how do you assess that intervention? How do you know it works? So having an organ perfused for a long time allows you the time factor to work. But then you need to assess the intervention. This is an example for liver, for example, where you can look at the perfusate, you can look at the microRNA, at the dumps, cytokines, and so on, but also how the liver functions in terms of lactate, pH maintenance, and so on. And the same for the cholangiocyte. But then we need specific tests for cellular therapy, for RNA, for senolytics, and so on. So that will bring a new array of biomarkers and strategies to try and test this. So this is a quick tour. I mean, there's a lot out there. I mean, it's impossible to cover that in 20 minutes, but I think it's quite clear that certainly in our practice, machine perfusion is now established with excellent results, increases organ utilization, and certainly transplant logistics. We stopped transplanting at night, if possible, but there are a number of challenges that are still to be addressed, but equal opportunities: duration, the quality of the perfusate, which organs benefit from what combination or strategies. And with that comes with delivery. As I said, I don't think anyone should do this or everyone should do this. I think it's about having in a facility that's centralized, has a GMP facility to try and expand to the next level, which is about therapy. Because that's where we're going. I think it's important to understand that machine perfusion is not just a clinical tool, it's actually a vector for therapy delivery to allow us to improve the quality of the organs. And I think we're going to see that in the clinical trial in the future. Some of the work I presented, it comes from a very good big collaboration and group, and I think it's important to acknowledge the entire team. Thank you very much.